Give language to get language. 1.1.
When we hear professionals talk about the importance of give language to get language, it means several important things. Namely, we must provide AAC tools and we must use those tools to show our AAC learners how they work and why they're awesome. But first, let's unpack the difference between speech and language so we can ensure that we're on the same page about exactly what it means to give language. Speech is an acoustic symbol. It is words, often language, that we express vocally. Language is the use of words to express meaning. Language may be expressed through symbols, spoken, signed, written, or symbolically represented. Language is the building blocks of how we begin to understand, respond to, and share about our world. Language ensures that we can talk about the things beyond the here and now. The third dimension is, of course, communication. Effective communication is simply sharing a message others understand. It may or may not include speech or language. Body language, gestures, vocalization, and facial expressions are often very effective forms of communication and sometimes the most efficient. Throughout this series, we will explore the many ways that language is expressed through AAC. This language builds on naturally occurring communication to give AAC learners valuable experiences that expand upon what they wish to express. Before we can get started with AAC, we must provide access to AAC. There are no prerequisite skills, just as there are no prerequisites for babies to learn to babble. We'll take a deeper dive into what makes really good or robust AAC and why that's important in subsequent videos. But for the purpose of this conversation, know that well-developed AAC is more than just a choice board or yes-no symbols. It's access to symbol-based language that has enough words to allow anyone of any age to experience lots of rich language while engaging in life's activities in meaningful ways.
We kept trying to give him that voice. Then they backed us back and went to just Peck's pictures. They didn't want to use any augmentative piece. They just wanted, let's just use the pictures. And we really didn't go anywhere for probably 4 or 5 years because the SLP at school really felt that if he can't do the pictures, then we can't do anything else. And so that's where we kind of stalled.
Another thing is I know I've heard of angels who just hadn't been exposed to this and they're older and they were exposed and they got onto so much because they had it in their head and they just needed a way to express it. So I think that's very powerful and
For language and communication skills to develop, learners must have access to a tool that allows them to experiment with language. This is no different than the role of babbling and self-talk in typical language development. It comes before proficient language use. AAC has the added feature of being visual and concrete, a multimodal language experience. Well-developed AAC tools, like language itself, are pattern-based. Unlike speech, which disappears as soon as it is spoken, these tools create a sort of map that AAC learners can explore and learn about language through multi-sensory experiences as others use it to talk to them. As such, access to AAC makes language accessible to AAC learners both receptively and expressively.
Push harder in those early years to get your community, meaning mostly the school community, around you, support you. And you may have to bring things to them, like some of the information. I remember early on, again, his SLP wanted him to, well, if he can't appropriately in the data that I have show that he's choosing one of these pictures appropriately more than 50% of the time, he can't use dynamic AAC. But when I'd go to a conference and talk to people who are working with kids with Angelman syndrome and others, yeah, no, just because he can't hear doesn't mean he won't there. So we need to give it to him and let him show us.
This was years and years ago, and I went out of town. And I had been gone for a while, and Tyler, his dad's like, oh, she's at Stephanie's in Arizona, and he hit it, and my husband sent a picture of me. He hit Mom Airport home mom. Yeah, and just from Clay, my husband didn't even like verbalize that she flew on a plane. But he knows that's how we get to Stephanie's. And he texted me, he's like, yeah, look what Tyler did.
When getting going with AAC feels a bit like jumping off a cliff, keep this in mind. All language is learned through experience. We help our learners get this experience through modeling. It will feel natural after a bit, so dive in and keep going. Initially, you may be inclined to model labels for familiar things, but as you will see in the weeks that follow, it's important to talk about what you and your AAC learner are doing, feeling, and thinking. Comment and think aloud with AAC to show your learner what it's all about. Think of it this way. Just as children of deaf parents learn American Sign Language or ASL, and children with Japanese-speaking parents learn Japanese, and you understood more Spanish after 3 weeks in Spain than 3 years of high school Spanish, experiencing language in natural contexts is critical to language learning. That is one reason why AAC is not just a speech therapy thing. AAC learners benefit from a whole range of communication partners, showing them how their AAC works to gain skills as lifelong communicators.
And his first private speech therapist wanted to focus more on sounds and signing, and we knew that that probably wasn't going to be a great option either. So we went to the UNC clinic and actually got a chance to have a long meeting with Margaret there in the SLP there. So it was wonderful, and she was the one that told us to jump right into it. You know, here he is 2 years old. They said jump right into it. We said we've been told he's not ready. She said no, start modeling.
Language learning is messy, and that's okay. Having open expectations keeps us grounded and optimistic in the understanding that practice and meaningful interactions, and often lots of repetition, are necessary for learning. Some learners just need to see something more than a few times before they learn it. Others may require many, many, many turns, and that's okay. One of the biggest barriers to writing and implementing AAC can be the lack of proof. Too often, people require some proof of ability before giving learners access or opportunity to learn symbol-based language. How can we expect AAC learners to prove they can use AAC when they haven't been provided the tool or haven't been given the opportunity to learn how? Let the open expectations we provide lead the way.
Tyler's using it better now at 21 than he was at 12, and he had it since he was 3. So, I mean, no age is too old or to introduce it. And there's no timeline on how long it should take and how quick they're going to catch on to it, because they're all different.
Lastly, communication is a two-way street. Give your AAC learner feedback about when they communicate, regardless of the communication modality they choose. Repeat what they say and expand on it. If they bring you shoes, use AAC to say go or go out as you verbalize you want to go outside. If they bring you their AAC and point to the dog, use AAC to make a best guess about what they're trying to say. Dog sleeping? Want to play with dog? Or dog made a mess?
I'm really close with some Angelman families in the community who talked about POD, and so robust AAC. So I knew my twin sister is an SLP, so I also have a little bit, but I knew about AAC I've been an art teacher for 10 years, so some of my students, I've seen it a little bit, and I just wanted more for her. So I know that she wants to express like so much. And I felt that with the PECs that we were doing at that point, that she wasn't going to be able to explain that like her favorite movie was so-and-so, or I want to go to the park, or things like that.
So from the beginning, you could see the limitation.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that I don't ever want to put a cap on Maya, because I know that she's amazing and she can express so many things.
We have to give language to get language. As you get started or re-inspired on your AAC journey, keep this mantra in mind. The idea of giving language to get language will keep you oriented to the importance of your role as a communication partner and help you share that AAC is a priority.